So, Brad, my sense from California is that spring has sprung. Am I right in thinking that in Philadelphia, spring is starting to dawn upon you, my friend?
Yes, we are finally well into spring. We had kind of a bumpy March there. We've had a couple really cold days in March, and then followed right up by a 72-degree day, and then back down into the 30s and 40s. But now it's starting to kind of straighten out a little bit.
So, okay, follow-up question. Is there a hidden drawer? Is there a Tupperware box under the bed that has all the Brad Geiger cargo shorts? And when the spring comes out, all the cargo shorts come out again, you know?
I got to tell you, I don't know whether this is weird or not, but I can't go halfway. In other words, once the shorts come out, all of the jeans go into storage until next winter, and it's just shorts. I don't go back and forth. I don't like a lot of this back and forth stuff. So once the shorts come out, the shorts are out.
It's a solid break. It's like, nope, now. And so might there be a day or two where the kneecaps get cold, Brad? Because the jeans have been put away and the cargo shorts don't quite keep the knees warm?
If it happens, it happens. I'm not taking those jeans back out. It's done. I don't get played around with by nature. If it happens and it's cold, I'll just stay in the house or I'll do whatever I got to do. But I can't go back and forth. It's too much stress. I've got to make a clean break with my cold weather and my warm weather clothes.
Okay, I got to ask you one last follow-up question because we're similar enough as people that I think this might be the case, but I need confirmation.
Yeah.
All the shorts that are in the Brad Geiger collection, all of the shorts.
Yeah.
Were they purchased a few presidencies ago? Have any of them been purchased recently, or do shorts sort of stay in rotation as long as the button lasts?
As long as the button, yeah. Let's. Number one is the waistline. Number two is the buttons. It isn't until number three or even number four that we get down to whether it's still in fashion or not. And that's
it's definitely not in fashion. Listen, I know us both well enough to know that it's definitely not in fashion.
Yeah, definitely a couple of presidencies. The only thing that keeps me fashionable is when that waistline goes up another notch and it gets a little bit too tight. And then I've got to take a look at current fashions for the larger man.
Can I tell you the only thing that keeps me in fashion, Brad, is the ability of fashion to go on 30-year cycles. That's the only thing that keeps me in fashion, is the things that I still own. Hey, guess what? They're coming back around again. I'm still good.
Are you telling me that my leather woven belt is going to come back into style?
Oh, Bradley.
If you're telling me that, I still know exactly where I can put my hands on that thing.
I'm just saying, form an orderly line, world, because Brad's got the woven leather belt from 1992, and he's ready to bring it back out again. Are you going to do the little floppy doodle up in the front like we did in 1992,
absolutely,
Brad?
Absolutely. The little fake leather phallus, just dangling there. I loved how that was considered fashionable. And then that and the boat shoes, I'm ready to bring it all back.
Oh my God. So listen, gang, if you're on a Carnival Cruise Line at some point in the next 3 years, look out for Brad Geiger. He's going to be holding his Mai Tai with his woven leather belt and his boat shoes. Oh, gang, you're in for a treat. And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil, Inc.
And I'm his pal Dave Keller, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of the comics documentary Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We've got a big show for everybody. Brad and I were talking about it before we turned on the mics, and we're excited for it because it's a bunch of, why are you already giggling? What is that all about?
It was one of those times when we literally got so carried away in the conversation that one of us had to say, stop talking, turn on the mics.
It is true. It
turned into this whole, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, a whole rant. And it's like, oh my God, we're gonna wear out all of our energy. So we stopped talking, hung up the phone, and came running to the microphones.
Running to Brad, immediately put on a woven belt and ran to the microphone.
Dave, it never came off. Yeah, I didn't have to put it on. It never came off.
Oh, it does come off, Brad. Da, 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 da. Well, let's jump right into it. So the main topic, Brad, that we wanted to talk about, I'm going to let you lead it off because you had the most vim and vigor for it, I think, my friend.
So it happened on Bluesky when we were, I just was scrolling through and somebody had made one of those posts that come up from time to time that says something along the lines of, it's so hard to make a living in comics, this person asked the question: if you make comics as your full-time job, how do you do it? And for people who make comics on the side while having a full-time day job, how do you do that without overworking or burning out? And one of our longtime listeners tagged us both and said, "Hey, this might be an interesting discussion on Comic Lab." And the good news is you're right. The bad news is I don't know that you're going to like what we have to say, because and by the way, I've seen this person post before. They're a delightful, wonderful, thoughtful, intelligent person. Here's the problem: we've done over 400 shows, and every darned last one of them has been about this topic. In fact, we just got done saying it. The show about making comics and making a living in comics. 400 plus episodes of Comic Lab have been about this exact topic, plus 400 plus ProTips episodes. Everything that we talk about is to help you to build a sustainable comics income. So yes, it would be a good topic for us to talk about, and that's because it has been the only thing we've talked about since we started the show in 2018.
Yeah, and I'm forgetting the phrase in French, but it literally is the reason for being for the show.
Raison d'être.
Raison d'être.
That's how they say. That's exactly how they say it in Paris too. They say, "Excuse me, I would like one order of French fries and French dip right over here by the Eiffel Tower, and that's my raison d'être."
I delight in you. Hey, I'd like one of them raison d'etres, please. Hey, you got some of that with a croissant and some raison d'etre, please. No, it's literally the reason for being for the show, which is that we're trying to send the ladder back down and in our own limited way say, hey, here's some possibilities for how you two can both make comics and ideally make a full living from comics, right? And so with the caveat that we are learning and growing and changing in real time as well as everybody else as the world grows and changes in real time. And so it is never a fixed model of this is how you do it. This is the one path up the mountain. It's an acknowledgement that there are hundreds of paths up the mountain, but that it is possible, it is doable, and here are some strategies for doing it, right? And so one of the reasons that Brad and I wanted to bring this Bluesky thread onto the show and talk about it is that it's both helpful, but it's also kind of dangerous to read through one of these threads. Because Brad, on a Saturday morning with my coffee, read through about 200 of these. And I saw maybe 5 or 6 names that I knew, and I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, yep, sure. By the way, some people self-reporting, in fact, everybody self-reporting in an honest way as much as they were willing to be honest. So no fault to any of the people that were posting in the thread. But so some people were like, oh, you know what? My spouse has a great job with healthcare. I have a part-time job. Oh, hey, I do full-time, but if I need to, I switch back between graphic novels and I'll take part-time work, or hey, I do this, or hey, I do that. And all of which is fine, all of which is legitimate. But the overarching thing that I came away with, though, is that when you survey 500, 600, 700 cartoonists, and it's self-reporting.
Yes.
Very often what you can get, Brad, is an echo chamber of despair.
Well, let's talk about this, because as we're recording right now, I'm looking at this thread. And to be totally fair to our listener, right? This might be closer to what they had in mind, in that, like, maybe they weren't saying, hey, it would be nice if Brad and Dave talked about making a living in comics. But instead, it might have been, hey, look through these conversations that people are having and comment on that, which, oh, by the way, is what we're just about to do. So to be totally fair to this person, that might have been what they were kind of talking about too.
Right.
But I did the same thing. I'm reading through this entire conversation, all these people chiming in, and I'd see, somebody saying basically, hey, it's not working out for me. I've been doing this for a long time. And, my Patreon never got very high. And so the first thing I do is I go and I look at the comic, right? And I see that right off the bat, visually, I see a bunch of stuff that I would change immediately if I were doing something on the web with an eye towards building a readership, right? And I narrated it out to Dave as I was looking at it, because this is one of the things we were talking about. It was a 6-panel comic. A woman walks up to a door. Panel 2, she walks in the door. Panel 3, she walked up to another door. Panel number 4, a different woman comes running from the other direction. Panel 5, that woman comes to a door. And panel 6, that woman walks through a door. Now, you cannot build an audience with that update.
You can barely build me paying attention to you describing that. By
Holy shit! Now, and it's one of the mistakes we talk about all the time on the show. Again, 400 episodes. We say, hey, if you're doing a webcomic, you cannot just put the pages of a graphic novel on the web. That ain't gonna work. Every day someone's reading your comic for the first time, and you have to capture them. That means something has to happen in this update. And if it takes you 2 graphic novel pages to do it on this particular update, then that's what you do, right? Or you find a way to make something happen, and it changes the way you have to write, the way you have to present. And we've, again, talked about this so often, but that's the first thing that you notice. All these people who are saying, oh, geez, it's not working out for me. You look and you see the first reason that it's not working out. They're not doing a very good comic. Right. That's right off the bat.
And as we've often talked about in sort of the 20 comics commandments that we did a long time ago, number 1 is before you talk about anything else, first do a good comic. So yeah, a lot of them, when you click through on the thread, Brad's right. You click through and you're like, well, this is not a very good comic. I mean, it's not very hard to you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out where the crime was committed here. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's true. But the bigger thing too for me was that, looked at broadly, when you look at a lot of self-reporting on a thread like this, I want to say it is helpful. I did, even as a working professional, I did find it helpful and interesting to read through these and see like, oh, this is how this person makes it or doesn't make it. Yeah. Oh, this is how this person struggles or doesn't struggle. That's great. But I just want everybody to be aware, because I've seen these you see them in surveys, you see it in threads, you see it's sometimes in shared Google Docs where people self-report, but that a lot of times it's, like I said, it's an echo chamber of despair, or it's a confirmation bias that no one is making it. Because it's, or maybe it's better to say it's survivorship bias in reverse. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, no one's doing it. No one's making it.
I can't do it, so nobody can do it.
Right. Because it's the equivalent of walking up to one of those basketball courts in New York that have like 20 basketball courts in a row, right? You know, those big, Philly probably has these too. Yep. You know, the like sometimes it'll be a half block and it's just literally 20 places for pickup basketball games. And it's 3-on-3 and 5-on-5 games of basketball. It's a bunch of people playing pickup. If you walked up to those courts, Brad, 20 courts of 10 people each playing on each court. So you got 200 people to choose from. And you go, hey, 200 people, how many of you are making a living from basketball? You know what I mean? And your data is going to be flawed, because the self-reporting, you're not going to get any NBA guys going, oh yeah, I'm making $40 million a year there. Right. You know what I mean? And so part of what happens on these self-reporting threads or these self-reporting surveys or self-reporting Google Docs is the people that aren't making it don't self-report because it's a thing called tall poppy syndrome. They fear being attacked or being knocked down for succeeding while others are suffering, right? And they also have survivor's guilt, which is a different way of saying it. They feel awkward if they're making $150,000 a year, but they're in that same thread, people are discussing how they're skipping meals or they can't make rent or, you know what I mean, Brad? Because there's a lot of those things in that thread.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have somebody going like, I can't make rent and I don't know, I don't have health care and oh boy, my health conditions are acting up and cartooning's not paying the bills. You're not going to see the penny arcade guys come in and be like, well, we made X amount of money last year. They're not going to do it.
We've got X number of employees. We've got a number of conventions that are basically branded with our product. Yeah, they're not going to jump in.
They're not going to jump in. And so you get this confirmation bias that like a struggling artist sees 10 posts about how the industry is dead and assumes that their personal failure is a systemic inevitability, right? And so it's like it leads to a loss of agency that it's even possible to do this thing. So I just want people to see it in context of what you get when you ask for self-reported career status. You know what I mean?
Yeah, these threads are really dangerous in that regard. And that is because you can get talked into believing that very quickly. Because again, it's the only thing you see here is everybody saying, well, I tried it and I can't do it. Right. And unless you're willing to go in and the first thing that I do when I read that stuff is I look at their comic, and then if they're doing a good comic, right? Then you go to the next step. And we just talked about that a few episodes ago, where we said, it all comes down, success in this business all comes down to, in my thought, two things: being able to do a good comic that connects with your audience and the ability to make good business decisions. And that includes everything from merchandising to crowdfunding to, making sure that you understand any contracts before you sign them. The business decisions are important, and you can have a balance in there. You can be a little bit better at one than you are at the other. And we discussed all of that, but it happened over and over again. I would click on one of these people, go check out their comic. All right. They're not doing a comic that I can tell, they need to improve some things about the craft. Then you'd get the other one. You'd see somebody doing a very good comic and you'd be like, okay, now you've got my attention. Why are you not making headway in your career? Right. And then you'd go over to their Patreon and they're making all the Patreon mistakes. Right, they're doing everything that we've got.
Join me for $1, that kind of thing.
My God, and all of them mistakes, and we've got entire episodes in the archive where we say, here's 10 mistakes you're making on Patreon that we can tell without even looking at your stuff. Here's 10 mistakes you're probably making, and they haven't changed that. That was a show that we did, I think, back maybe pre-COVID. Still as accurate. The only thing is, instead of going from $1 to $2 for your bottom, I'd consider maybe $3 now with inflation. Everything else is rock solid in terms of what we're talking about there. If you expect a monthly pledge, you've got to do monthly work, all of that stuff. And then very quickly you see, okay, there's my answer. And it happens over and over. This person is capable of doing a good comic. Their business acumen just needs to come up. And I see this. I was telling Dave before the show, I see when I do comics consultations. And one of the things that happens very often is that I'll say, okay, you need to do this, this, and this. And it's all stuff that they've heard on the podcast, right? And they know they got to do it. But they need to hear somebody tell them, you've got to do this. You got to do this.
Right.
It's not just
you specifically.
Yeah. And all the stuff, it makes perfect sense. And some of them, I've had a couple just recently. They took these concepts and they are running with them like crazy, and they're doing really great. You can see the progress they're making. I get so excited about that stuff. But none of it is magic. In other words, it's all stuff that they've heard me say on the show, except we sit down and say, okay, now let's talk about how you are going to implement these in your comic. Let's talk about your strategy. aside from that, it's nothing new. It's not like I hold back magic words or something like that. It's all stuff that we talk about week after week. But now I'm just saying, now you got to do it. And right. I think that's what some of these folks need too, is they know they need to do certain things to make crowdfunding work, but they just need someone to say, now you got to do it.
Exactly. And so for me, there is a value in threads like this, or in the surveys that occasionally come out for our industry, or the Google Docs that sometimes get spread around of where people self-report. But the way, I guess what I'm trying to argue for here is that the way that you should view these is as a data point, but not the data point.
Right.
Because you're never going to get the complete picture in a self-reported survey, because you'll kind of only hear from those who either don't have or have plenty of time to report or are very willing to report. So you're not going to get the what's a different way to say it? It's like I said before, it's a survivorship bias in reverse. And so the only ones loud enough to be heard are the people saying, "Hey, it's impossible. This is not going to work." That creates a systemic danger of a distorted reality for you that no one is making it, that, oh, the entire industry is dying. Nobody pays for art. It's only luck. And so when the reality is the industry is hard, it's hard as hell,
Very
but
hard.
It's shifting and evolving. It's not dying. It's shifting and evolving. And that it's not that nobody pays for art. It's that specific ways of getting people to pay for art for 1,000 true fans is a very buildable career and survivable and livable. And it's not that it's all luck. It's that it's a mix of skill and networking and business savvy and cartooning savvy and ever increasing abilities to do all three better and better and better as the years go on, right? And so I a little bit get nervous for the 22-year-old that looks through one of those threads and says to themselves, well, literally everyone on this thread is despairing, so I guess it's impossible to be a cartoonist. When I guess what I'm saying is the successes often don't self-report for a million psychological reasons, and sometimes even just being busy, that they're like, I'm not going to self-report on this. There is literally no benefit for someone who is doing very well to self-report in one of those threads.
I mean,
no benefit.
Dave and I both looked at that thread. We didn't participate in it.
Hell. There's no way I'm telling people how I'm doing. No.
Absolutely not. We do this podcast. That's enough. But also there's critical thinking that needs to happen here that I don't. But by the way, that I don't do critical thinking a lot of times when I should. Right. And certainly when I'm just passively scrolling social media, that's a lot of times when I'm not necessarily doing critical thinking. But I'm just scrolling through this thread here. Here's another person that's self-reporting, and they basically say that they do a comic whenever they get inspired to do a comic. And then they go on to say how they're not very successful at doing a comics business. Well, of course you're not. Right. And without critical thinking, you can sit there and let that wash over you and say, oh my God, nobody's making a living in comics. Except if you're somebody that just does this whenever they're inspired to do it, you can't sit there and wonder why you're not making a lot of money doing this, or why you can't build a sustainable income, because that is the very definition of a hobbyist, of someone who is, and which is perfectly valid.
Perfectly valid. Yeah.
Comics as a hobby is a wonderful thing, but you can't sit there and question why it's not building a sustainable income, because that's almost like a fantasy fairy tale of how things work, right? If you want to be a professional, you've got to be able to bring this even when you're not feeling inspired. Do you know how not inspired I was last week, and I still had to write something that was compelling and entertaining and meaningful? Very much not inspired. I still did it, right? Because that's what this business entails.
Yeah, it's working through flu. It's working through a loved one dying, like I went through last year, and so. Yes. And so what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is, like, these are valuable data points in these kind of self-reporting things. But like a lot of stuff, You want to throw out the 10% of responders and throw out the top percent of the responders and focus on the middle 80%. And in doing so, you want to say to yourself, how do I move from the lowest 25th percentile of reporting to the top 25th percentile reporting?
Yeah.
Because it is possible. So how do I do it? And so what you want to do is look through a thread like that for like the people who are like, well, here's what I did. I did X, Y, and Z. Okay, great. That's a useful data point. Getting the data point that sounds like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh going, no, it's not possible to make a career in art. No one, oh, Pooh, no one does it. And I live in a garage under a river. And, you're like, all right, well, thanks a lot. That's not helpful to anybody. What I'm saying is throw out the responses that are the lower 10% of like, it's impossible, no one makes it. Throw out mentally the top 10%. Like I'm not going to be Dave Pilkey. I never will be. So throw that data point out for Dave Kellett. Like Dave Pilkey will never be a possibility for me.
Right.
So I throw that one out, but I focus on the 80% of the cartoonists in the middle of a survey like that. And I say, okay, but how are the ones managing it? How are they doing? What are they doing that has moved them from the lowest 25th percentile to the top 25th percentile of cartoonists working, And in that way, you can pick up trade secrets. You can pick up tips and tricks. You can pick up pro strategies for how to improve your art, how to improve your business, how to improve your marketing. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do on this show is saying like, listen, you're never going to be in the top 10%. We're not guaranteeing that. We're not saying it's even possible.
Right.
Ideally, you're never going to be in the bottom 10%, but by God, try to move up in the percentiles of success and know that it's possible. Know that like you don't have to have this echo chamber of despair in your cartooning, right? Yeah. That it's not that, yes, it's hard. It's very hard. If it was easy, freaking everybody would choose this career because it's fun. But it is hard, and the industry is evolving, and it is shifting. And it is tricky to get those 1,000 true fans to pay for the art on a regular basis, but that it is possible, and that it's not just luck. Because I'll tell you another thing that pissed me off. There was a cartoonist that I know, Brad. I know for a fact that they make well over $300,000, maybe $400,000 a year in their cartooning. And they got on that thread, and I was like, oh, I'm interested to see what they would say. I don't know if you saw them.
No, I didn't make it down that far.
But they go, well, it was all luck. I was in the right place at the right time. And I wanted to scream out, motherfucker, I know you have worked so hard for the last 20 years. Yeah. You have put in the time and the effort to make your comic great. And you have this fantastic mix of skill and networking and business savvy. It was not just all luck. And so on that end, I got mad too, because I was like, this is an unfair self-reporting. Yeah. And it's a version of what I wanted to say, which is you never get the complete picture when you're trying to gather data from self-reporting.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. As you're talking, I'm on the other tab scrolling and scrolling because now I'm dying to see who that is. You can tell me later. But yeah, the problem is there's a lot of people out here doing this and doing it very well and making a sustainable income. Those are the people you should be seeking out. A thread like this, it makes me very uncomfortable for the reasons that we just got done talking about, because I can see this discouraging somebody who actually might have it in themselves to become a good, to build their skill of the craft up so they are connecting with an audience, and then to learn the business side and to make good, smart business decisions. Patreon is not that hard to figure out. Crowdfunding is not that hard to figure out. You have to be very careful because, again, to not follow the trends. Here's a perfect example. This is exactly the same as everything that happened in that thread. Every time you see someone saying, support me on Patreon, a phrase that drives me up the wall, partially because I've talked about for years how it's not a good phrase, but partially because everybody says it because everybody says it. Nobody stops to think about, is there a better way to phrase this sentence? They just say it because everybody says it. It's hearsay. That's what I heard. That's what I'm going to say, right? That, writ large, is what we're talking about here, right? It's not hard to be good at crowdfunding like Patreon, but you do have to take a moment and tune in and not just copy what you hear everybody saying, because a lot of people are saying really dumb things that if you go back to this thread are clearly not bringing them good results. And yet they're doing them all over again. All these people that are in that thread saying they can't make a living, I guarantee you, if I went through their threads, I'd see them saying, hey, support me on Patreon. And it's not working for them and they're not changing it, which means that they're not paying attention to their own business, to their own progress. They're just going on reflex. Well, I'm going to do it because everybody does it. All the stuff in that thread is really dangerous to somebody who doesn't know enough about what's going on, so that they look at that and they again come away with saying, well, nobody can make a living in comics. Holy crap. We could sit and give you name after name after name, and we're not gonna, because they might not want that kind of attention and notoriety, but there's lots of people that are doing this very, very well. And all you got to do is go out and pay attention, and you'll find them. You'll gravitate towards them. Those are the people that you should listen when they talk about business. I don't know. This thread makes me so uncomfortable because of all of the people that are going to get completely the wrong idea out of it.
Yeah, I maybe it's the dad in me, but I always think of the young cartoonist that gets disheartened by this.
Yeah.
And again, I want to say to that younger cartoonist, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying that everybody can do it. What I'm saying is I just don't want you to take away as the main data point from a thread like this that it is impossible, or that nobody pays for art ever, or that the industry is dying 100% and no one's making a career out of it. Because that's also a false data point, right? Like, so again, you can look through the thread if you are if you have a constancy of mind enough such that you can throw out the bottom 10% responses and throw out the top 10% responses and focus on the actionable advice that you might find in this thread saying, I did X, Y, and Z, and it improved my business, it improved my art. Great, that's great. Those are helpful data points, right? But don't take away from a thread like that this echo chamber of despair represents all possibilities for you in your cartoon, like conclusively represents all possibilities for you in your own cartooning.
Yeah.
As I've said before, if I were to walk into a room of cartoonists, of 30 cartoonists, and say, only one of you is going to make a career, you've got to kind of have a spark in your heart that says, by God, I'm going to do what it takes to be the one that makes it of these 30. Yeah, I'm the one.
They're talking about me.
Right, exactly, because you'll then put in the work. You'll read the books. You'll listen to all the podcasts. You'll go out and read the blogs that are sharing tips and tricks and keeping your head on a swivel and constantly working on your art, because it is possible and it is a career worth doing. And I just don't want people to have this survivorship bias in reverse that they might get from this thread, that no one is making it and art is impossible. Hey, gang, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we'll tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
Yeah, because when you do, you'll get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And you'll get access to our exclusive Discord server, a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And ho Nelly, if you want even more comics goodness in your life, check out the new drawing show that we're doing with our pal Kevin McShane over at wrongwayshow.com. That's wrongwayshow.com.
In each episode, we'll show you how to draw your favorite cartoon characters the wrong way.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Along those lines, let's tie up this conversation here. Does that mean that the person that started this thread is a bad person or did a bad thing? Absolutely not. In other words, you can hear that person's voice saying, oh man, this is really difficult. If you're doing this full time, can you explain to me how you're doing that full time? And if you're doing it part time, can you explain to me how you're doing that too? Because I just want to see some kind of path forward. That's basically what this person is saying. They didn't set out to do something that was deleterious to someone else's progress.
Deleterious? Oh.
Deleterious.
Oh, my goodness. Form an orderly line, not only a woven belt and boat shoes, but deleterious.
But having said that everything in that thread is perfectly valid.
Yes.
But what Dave and I are saying is that it's important to take everything that you saw there and do the critical thinking involved with putting it in its proper place and not letting it die. I could see this person that made the original thread walk away saying, well, I'm as confused now as I ever was. Right. And maybe even more disappointed.
I really want to just focus in on Brad's thought there, that just read it and take it in, but do it with critical thinking, or I would say do it with discernment. Like, absolutely take in these posts that say, hey, listen, I'm able to be a cartoonist because my spouse has health care. Right. I'm able to be a cartoonist because I keep a part-time job. By the way, Brad and I have said from the start on this show, that is a totally valid way to make cartooning. It is a pro-am, amateur, pro. We celebrate all the different varieties of great comics being made because Brad and I have walked every single one of those paths at different points in our career. There have been times in my marriage where I've relied on my wife. There have been times in my marriage where my wife has relied on me, and that's totally valid. Both of as artists, we have both shouldered the load at different points in our career, and so there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with having to balance out a career in comics with a day job or with a part-time job. Zero problem with that. No problem at all. Yeah. I'm just saying, don't lean into the emotions of a thread like that might make you feel like there's a confirmation bias that it is impossible. That's what I get nervous about.
Yeah. It is possible. It's hard as hell, but it is possible. Don't get discouraged by a thread like that. And as long as we're talking about professional cartoonists and professional cartoonist organizations, let's take just a small moment right now to remind you about the upcoming National Cartoonist Society Reuben Awards and National Conference, which is happening in Columbus, Ohio on August 6th through the 8th. Well, Dave and I have gotten a sneak preview of what's going to be happening that week, and oh man, are we ever excited about being participants in this year's events.
First of all, that transition, my God, you can't pay for a transition. You can't pay for a transition like that. Secondly, this is legit. Brad and I are super excited for this year's Reubens. Two huge heroes of us growing up, Kathy Geiswhite and Jim Davis will be talking. We're going to be doing a panel talk called Actionable Advice in a Time of Change. It's a Comic Lab live panel that you're going to want to see. There'll be the TED Talks that are being called Toon Talks, the 10-minute speeches. There's going to be lawyers talking about IP, contract, and legal considerations in cartooning careers. There's going to be a, what do you call it, Brad, when the first speech is going to be? A keynote. Thank you. Yes. Oh, Grandpa had a moment there. There's going to be a keynote talk you're going to not going to want to miss. And then there is the signing and selling portion the day after the Reubens, which is going to be exciting. We haven't done that since the Portland show a decade ago. So legitimately, this is not something that the NCS has paid for or asked us to do. We're excited for it. And we want folks that are in the Midwest, that are listeners to the show, to come out and join us. Even non-NCS members can come to the talks. But you got to go to National Cartoonists, right? .com. Is that the URL?
And I'll have that URL right down there in the show notes so you can go right over. Go to the membership page, scroll down. If you are under, is it 26 or 27? I always get it wrong. But if you're a youngster, let's put it that way, they've got special membership prices just for you that you should check out. It's all the way at the bottom of the page. I think it's called Club 26 or Club 27. It's never been easier to become a member of the National Cartoonist Society. And the good news is, if you become a member or if you just get a ticket to the talks, you can come out and see Dave and I, and we can all talk comics together.
And there's nothing more fun than Brad Geiger after, what is it, a finger or two of whiskey
After
talking
a couple
comics.
whiskey sours, you can't get me to shut up about comics.
And you'll see Dave with a pina colada or whatever sugary drink they have on offer, probably a milkshake. And listen, if you're a professional or pro-am cartoonist and you want a table, if you are a fully attending NCS member, I think you can table for free, Brad, right? You just have to sign up.
They're going to have a sign up for that. So definitely be looking, because I got a feeling it's going to be first come, first served. So you definitely want to keep your eyes open for that announcement.
So anyway, we are very excited to do this. And, we kind of buried the lead, but the whole thing is taking place at the Billy Ireland Cartoon Art Museum, which is also going to be fantastic. And so we're super excited for that.
Absolutely. If you do whatever you got to do to remember August 6th through the 8th.
Dude, I love a phrase like that. Do it. What do you got to do? You got to kill somebody? Do it. Get it done.
Do whatever you got to do. Listen, if you've got a tattoo August 6th through the 8th backward on your forehead so you see it every morning, first thing in the mirror, that's what you're going to do.
Brad, I am so happy to hear you say if you've got to get it tattooed, because folks will remember a few weeks back that I was talking about, hey, Brad, what if you had a gun to your head, what tattoo would you get put on your body? And Brad and I had a fun discussion about what that would be. But we kind of ended the conversation with saying like, we probably wouldn't get a tattoo. But Brad, we got a letter that came in from a longtime listener who is both a comic artist and a tattoo artist, Brad, right?
Yeah, Alistair Gilgrim wrote in and said, "Dearest Brad and Dave, been following you guys since the old podcast before Stripped." And if you remember, Stripped is Dave, the comics documentary that Dave co-directed. Been listening to you guys since then and have been a fan of not only your friendship and banter, but also the historic perspective you bring of how the comics medium has changed and continues to change. In a recent episode, y'all started throwing out ideas for tattoos and which one you would get if you absolutely had to. Nothing bad, but I figured you guys might want some insight from a tattoo artist who is also a published comic book artist. Firstly, both the one-to-one ruler and angle guides are practical tattoos that people actually get for the reason you describe. Turns out to be very useful in day-to-day activities and tends to be utilized in blue-collar work. It's not a dumb tattoo to get. It's easy to make sure it's accurate when executed and won't change remarkably over time so that it remains useful. I was thinking about that.
I was kind of surprised to hear that. Because after I thought about it, I was like, well, skin stretches, skin moves, skin sags. But it's kind of fun to, I'm sure they know the spots to put it, right?
I've got the perfect answer for that. It starts out in metric, and then as you sag, it becomes imperial.
I just want that phrase isolated for the show. It starts out, well, I'll tell you what, Dave, it starts out metric, and then as it sags, it becomes imperial. Yeah. Anyway.
Now, going back to the letter. Secondly, the death marker tattoo under the ear is actually a tattoo that a good friend and fellow artist has for the same reason. He's deaf on one side and has the speaker with a slash through it under his ear and a little behind to signify it. Always thought it was a clever tattoo. Finally, Dave, I hate needles too, and that's why I'm not a piercer. But we don't use needles, we use pins. Needles are hollow, pins are solid. And we only go down to the middle of the skin tissue where the melanin is, because that's where we're adding dye to make the tattoo. Pins are much smaller and honestly feel more like being scratched by an annoying cat than being punctured. It's annoying more than painful and really isn't all that bad unless you're doing large format, long session work like a ruler that goes all the way down your arm. Actually, I just added that last part. Long format, long session work. So there's nothing to be afraid of. And that's from our friend, Alistair Gilgrim, who is a tattoo artist and a comic artist.
I want to say how thankful I am. I love getting feedback like this. Yes. This was really fun, and it's fun to read. And I like that my one-to-one ruler idea might get traction. I thought that it would fade or stretch or not fade. I thought it would stretch or sag, as Brad said.
Yeah.
So that's fun to see that it's useful because I'll be honest, I do see a value in that as I do more and more woodworking as I get older.
You think you might actually do it?
No, God, no. I know I wouldn't, but I'm intrigued by it. Like, I don't know why. It's nice to now know that if I had to get a tattoo to save someone's life or something, that I'd be like, sure, yeah, put the ruler on my forearm. I don't know what situation, Brad, would someone break into my house and be like, your whole family's dead unless you get a tattoo.
Yeah, you got to get a tattoo.
But Alistair, thank you for this email, and I will say the part that made me laugh was, and Dave, it's not a needle, it's a pin.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, Alistair, here's what I was hearing: like, listen, I'm going to murder you, but it's not a knife, Brad. It's an ice pick, and there's a difference, Dave. And here's the difference.
Yeah.
The ice pick is shaped differently, and it's intended to break the ice, not to cut through the ice. But you're still going to be murdered. But you're going to be hit with an ice pick, Brad, not a knife.
Nobody who's ever been murdered with an ice pick has ever complained about it. And if you would like to talk back to us, you can leave your message on the Comic Lab Confab line. That's 609-379-3520. It's in the show notes. You can record a voicemail message for us, and we might even play it on the show.
That's right. It's 609-379-3520. And I want to tell everybody how much I love my friend Brad Geiger, because Brad goes this morning, he goes, hey, I figured out a word combination that we can use for the phone number. And I go, okay, what's the word combination? Because, sometimes you get a plumber that's like, I call 1-800-GO-PLUMBING and you'll get a plumber or whatever it is. And so Brad goes, it's all we got to say is 609-DRY-ELBOW. And I go, dry elbow? And he goes, yeah, except for instead of the O-W, it'll be elbow, but the O is a 0. And I go, what the hell? That doesn't
You're doing it all wrong. You're
dry elb 0.
It's 609 DRYELB 0. Dry elbow.
Dry elbow.
Yeah, 609 dry elbow ELB 0. That makes perfect sense to me.
That's not what that is. That's 609 dry elb 0 is what that is. No, it's not. Wait, I got to look on a phone. Is an O line up with? Now I got to look it up.
No, it doesn't. I think the O is a 5.
No, the O is 6. So it would be wrong, Brad.
No, but we say O. We say O for 0 all the time. We used to say leave the last O off for savings. Remember that bit we did on the show? It's dry. It's 609 dry elbow. DRYELBO.
So what I've just done by introducing Brad's bonkers as shit word comment is like someone's gonna call this number dry elbow and they're gonna get like some Midwestern roofing company and they're gonna be like, no, this is not the number for Comic Lab. I don't know what you're doing. Where'd you get this number? This is not listed. 609 dry elbow. That's not what? Who's Brad Geiger?
609 DRYELB 0.
Oh my God, ELB 0.
So smart. And think about I know your elbows get dry. My elbows have been dry. This is perfect tie-in for Comic Lab.
Oh, my God. All right, so I want to do one more update to the show now that we've mentioned Comic Lab Confab over at 609-379-3520, not dry elbow. I wanted to mention that 2 long-running, wonderfully successful, emutable comic strips are ending their runs in the next year. Both Baby Blues, who we recently had on the show, really wonderful interview. You should go back and listen to it. The 2 Baby Blues creators and the comic strip Zits are both ending their runs, Brad, in syndication.
And we really felt great that we were able to talk to those guys. It was a wonderful show, and 2 amazing comic strips that we both respect and love from the newspaper comic strip era. And evidently, we're going to be able to enjoy them for a long time to come because they're going to be going into reruns. They've done thousands of iterations of both of those titles, and they're going to be able to go back and start from the beginning like they did with Peanuts and For Better, For Worse, and just run them indefinitely for another, how many, couple of decades, 2 or 3 decades. They're going to be able to go on for a long time.
And for those that are still pining for a career in syndication, I want to tell you that this is actually yet another sign that it's not It's not a viable career for new people, and I'll tell you why. The fact that they're going to go into reruns is actually indicative of the fact that newspapers and syndication writ large are appealing solely to a boomer generation that is largely slowly giving up newspapers for a bunch of reasons in terms of how you can imagine people would be giving up Wink, a comic strip of a boomer generation. Because much like, for example, as a comparison, the wine industry is dying on the vine quite literally right now because all the boomers are dying off. And that was the last generation to really sink their teeth into wine and on a continuous and weekly basis. You know what I mean, Brett? Sink your teeth into
I love sinking my teeth into a good wine. Remind me never to go drinking with you.
Well, no, I mean, just in general, alcohol sales are down dramatically in the last 5 years because the boomer generation dying off and younger generations are like, well, I don't want to drink alcohol. It's not for me yet. And so you either have people going California sober or not drinking at all. What I'm saying is there is a parallel there. And the parallel to the newspaper industry is as the boomers die off, it is the last generation to, quote unquote, take a paper. Yeah. And so, of course, reruns are going to happen because they're still appealing to the same audience that grew up with those comic strips and come to know a newspaper as having those comic strips. And so, yes, that is the model, I think, going forward for syndication and for newspapers writ large.
It's such a fascinating conversation. This is one that we don't talk about as much on the show because it really isn't. For us, it kind of goes without saying. But there are so many comics now being done that are legacy comics. The original creator has long since died, and now it's either being done by family members or by a team that the syndicate hires and so forth. For there to be any real changes on the newspaper comics page is very unreasonable to expect that to happen. Your newspaper, until it finally goes out of business, is always going to have Beetle Bailey. That comic is going to be right there where it's always been, and it's always going to be there. Same thing for any number of other comics that you can list there. However, having said that, and this, Dave, drives me right up the wall, as soon as you say to anybody that you're a cartoonist, the first thing they say is, oh, syndicated? Right? Or they say, what newspaper are you in? That absolutely mystifies me time and time again when it happens, because it's such an indication of the disconnect between what we accept as reality and what's really reality, and an example of how powerful newspapers at one time really were. At one point,
that even their lingering shell of what they were is still perceived as more powerful. Yeah, exactly.
It's still the first thing somebody says is, "Oh, are you a syndicated cartoonist?" Whereas now, honestly, if somebody says they're a syndicated cartoonist, I almost hear that with my Gen X ears the same way I hear if somebody says that they're a published author. Right, because I know that being a published author today is not the same as it was in 1975 when being a published author meant something completely different. Today, I'm much, much happier being a self-published person. I know I can do way better in my career. But I would never walk up to somebody and say I'm a published author, even though technically I am. But
I wouldn't say it. I would never say that I'm a published author.
Something completely different. Yeah. So when I hear syndicated cartoonist, it's the same in my ear as published author. It's like, that's great. And it meant something, but man, oh man, the world is not headed that way anymore. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we say that with love for the people that are teens, 20s, 30s, still aching to get into syndication, is that we say it with friendship and love, is that it is not the viable path that you hoped it would be, right, Brad? Is that the best way to say it?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, listen, it's done. It's over. The only carve outs I'm willing to talk about in that regard is people who fall into two categories. And that is people who are doing work that could easily translate into that middle grade graphic novel area, right? In other words, they're doing Dana Simpson, great example. Phoebe and Her Unicorn, wonderful newspaper comic strip. She made the transition to doing a middle grade graphic novel. right? And now she's stopped the newspaper strip and is putting full time into that graphic novel side of things. So I would do kind of a carve out for that, as long as, in my opinion, you're signed with Andrews McMeel, who has shown that they know how to get into that particular audience. Andrews McMeel has done an amazing job of being able to transition their people from newspaper strips to middle grade graphic novels. They know how to market them. They know how to place them. I think you really have to give it to them for doing that effort in that. So like in that particular case, I don't feel quite as nervous for somebody who's syndicated, but for anybody who's looking to get into this business, again, we'll bring this whole show full circle. Those people that may have been disappointed by what they saw in a thread like the one that we were talking about at the top of the show, and they're saying, well, maybe I'll go into syndicated comics. Nah, you're better off sticking with the stuff that we were talking about at the beginning of the show.
Well, and it's actually worth it to pair this with the thought that I had earlier when I was talking in the thread saying, be wary of people saying the industry is dying, it's impossible, no one's making an art. Yeah. And so someone could point to what I just said and said, well, Dave, you just said syndication is dying, it's impossible, no one is making it. Yeah. And the way I'm saying it is cartooning is shifting and evolving. Yeah. That branch of cartooning is drying up. I don't know that unless you're already in the door, and by that I mean already in the door as of 5 to 10 years ago, and maybe picked up some of those Dilbert cancellations that happened a few years back. Yep. I don't know that it is a viable path for anyone new launching. But I'm not saying, and this is the part I want to be clear about, I'm not saying that cartooning is dying. I'm saying that branch of cartooning is struggling, and you need to shift and evolve to the branches that are thriving, or at least show a potential for thriving. Yeah.
Well, they're two different things, right? In other words, when we talk about syndicated comics, that is something empirically you can do the math yourself. You can look at newspaper circulation rates dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping, and knowing that at some point that number hits zero or close to it, maybe never zero, maybe we end up with two like national papers, that sort of thing. But you can look at newspaper rates dropping, and then when you realize that most of the syndicates, other than, like I said, those carve-outs for Andrews McMeel, who has done real well, when you realize that a newspaper syndication setup is mainly the main thrust of their organization and their business is selling their stuff to newspapers and other print publications. You do the math. Once the newspapers finally hit that rock bottom, which they are headed towards, it was a couple of years ago that the news story, I think, was that newspaper circulation had dropped at the lowest point that they had ever hit since the beginning of them keeping track of numbers. Like it was, it was lower than, and they had to go all the way back to, I think, pre-World War II and it had gotten to a lower point than any time during the history that they had been tracking numbers. When that happens, and when that newspaper syndication organization is just set up to get their comics into newspapers, empirically, you know that the end is near, unless they do one hell of a pivot. And Andrews McMeel is a really great example of one pivot that has been made. But the clock's running out. We've got to. If you're going to pivot, this is the time to do it. And then again, let's say that you're not one of those cartoonists that are doing that kind of a comic. Where's your pivot? That's something you got to think about as a creator.
Exactly. And that's why I don't want to say that cartooning writ large is dying. That's not all we're saying.
That's completely not true.
But we're saying it is shifting and evolving. And you just have to take into effect that since 2005, 3,500 newspapers in the U.S. have gone away. Yeah. And in the last year, another 150 newspapers have gone away. And so that's, You just have to take that into your factoring and say like, okay, is there a growth for cartooning syndication? No. And if anything, is it a balkanization of what's already existing and they're just going to keep running ones that they know work? Yeah, probably. Yeah. And that's the way you have to factor in your career plans for syndication. So anyway, without beating a dead horse, that's what we'll end that off on, I think.
Well, speaking of dead horse, this horse that we've been riding here for Comic Lab has finally given up the ghost. You spent another hour listening to us talk comics, and we're so happy that you did, because now it's my time to say that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and ostensibly making a living from comics.
Your hosts have ostensibly met my friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com, and the co-host of the new drawing show over at wrongwayshow.com.
And my close personal friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped, and the creator of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com, and another handsome co-host over at the drawing show at wrongwayshow.com.
And a huge shout out with love to Brad's woven belt, who is doing the Lord's work as Brad's treadmill continues to be broken downstairs in the basement. So shout out to Brad's belt on that, putting in the time, putting in the work, as they say. And I will say the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by the ever wonderful, ever whimsical Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, and we know that you do, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. And don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Spotify, where we are burning up the podcast charts.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/Comic Lab. So we'll go ahead and say that in the voice of Brad's woven belt. Patreon.com/Dear God, get me out of this job.
I'll tell you what, you laugh all you want. I know exactly where I can put my hands on that belt. It's not like I ever threw it away. I knew it was coming back.
So have you ever seen those scenes like in a like it's a Viking movie, or it's a movie with castles, and the old aging knight has to pull out their old armor, right? You know, and like one more battle, one more ride into battle.
Once more into the fray.
And there's always the close-up montage shots of them pulling the leather straps. Yeah. And I'm always like, I always think to myself, that leather is 30 years old and has not been treated with oil. That guy's going to ride into battle with that. And so, like, imagine Brad's belly encountering that 30-year-old belt. That belt will be doing the Lord's work if it gets called out into service one more time. It's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm fainting.
God, there's an Excalibur joke in there somewhere. I just haven't figured out how to connect the dots.